We're on several platforms. You'll see some comments on the right hand side. Uh, some people find they're a distraction, and some people are okay with it. I don't normally pay too much attention to the comments, but sometimes, I do keep an eye on them. And sometimes, somebody will have a good question or whatever the case is. So yeah, here we are. Okay, 31
Put my
seconds
name
into it.
in there.
Nobody's here yet. Let me make sure that it's actually working. Hang on, let me check. Let's see. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, we're coming on now. Somebody will have a good question. Got a couple of people in the house on this page. Let's see. Yeah, there's 10. We'll give it about another minute. Yeah, this will be interesting to find out, your story and talk about all the things related, and especially, given the circumstances of, let's just call it, for lack, we have to use human terms. Let's say a forced separation, and of course the divine union frequencies. And just the stories of these connections that are just, in my opinion, anchoring higher frequency. I've always said that you can't find oneness with 100 people or 1,000 people or the world unless you can find it with one. First, you got to find it with one. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
good. Yeah,
I can see that y'all have a pretty good synergy between you, no doubt, and love. That's perfect. So yeah, okay, it's 2 minute mark. Hello, everybody. We've got some new friends in the house. I'm excited. It's the only show we have planned today. Well, we've got Hugh with us, Hugh Mathias, and he's in Wells, and Rob Flebbe. He's in Beaumont, East Texas, and they're at this time separated as Morgan and I. I understand that one of you made a comment on Morgan's post, which was involving our separation and probably a bit of our story, and that you made a comment on it, so she reached out. Which is one of the ways that she finds people. So how did this all start? I mean, you guys are obviously from different countries. How did you run into each other? Was it an online thing?
It was.
yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Who busted the move?
Well, do you want to?
Hugh did, and I did, and I did, and Hugh did, and then I did.
Different times.
So Hugh had sent. It's a spiritual dating site, and just because I guess we both were obviously seeking, like, trying to narrow down the field. To some congruency and some alignment. And Hugh had messaged me. I got a message from him, and I was like, "Oh gosh, that's the guy I messaged. That's the first guy I messaged on the site." It's like he finally got my message. It was like a year later, at least a year after I messaged him, and I never heard back. And
what was it about? Maybe 6 months, maybe. Because I don't think I joined until summer of 2020. So maybe maybe just under a year. Yeah.
I have to think about it because I looked on the site and tried to connect a few times, and then I let it go and went on with my life. And then I came back, and because that company has 2 different sites, and I switched to the other site. And so it might have been, well, was that in the summer before?
So this
maybe
is
6 months.
This is pretty fresh, which I'm going by
this was
the linear timeline.
Last year.
Obviously we're not in a linear realm anymore,
right.
But no. So at this time, you're in Texas at this time, or somewhere in the US?
I was in Texas at the time, and Hugh was in Mexico.
I was in Mexico. Yeah, and I was in Mexico because I had traveled there for a retreat in January of last year, and I wanted to make sure that I could be in Mexico, so I left the UK early in December 2020 while travel was open, and I was in Mexico for a month, and then I did the retreat, and then I did some traveling around, and during the time that I was traveling around, that was when Rob and I began speaking. I think I was just transitioning from the west coast of Mexico to Oaxaca, and around that time we started speaking, and we had our first video call, I think late March.
2021.
2021.
Yeah.
And it lasted about 3 hours, I think, babe, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it was a long call. It was like, you know, we got on the call and we were just talking and talking and talking. And yeah, there was that synergy there right away. It was
he didn't know I had been watching his profile because some like what you had specifically put, like your headline or something.
And I think
what it was.
Yeah, my tagline on the site, because I think everyone has a little tagline. Mine was Prime Creator experiencing itself as a gay man.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay. And I just liked his profile. I just felt something. And so I had messaged him all those months before and never heard back. And I did not tell. I just assumed that he was responding to my initial message. And we didn't find out for another month when I actually brought it up. And I was like, well, you finally messaged me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, I messaged you a while back, and then I would check in to see if he had gotten back, and he didn't. And then then he said, no, I just messaged you. I found you and I messaged you. So he wasn't responding to my message. So it was actual effort on both parts.
Yeah, but the funny thing was, I think I remember seeing your profile on the site, but because I was new on there and I was sort of just finding my way around it, and I'd spoken to a few people on there, and yeah, and it just, I don't know why it just came back around like that. It was, I suddenly one day I went to look, and then I saw Rob's profile again, and I had another look, and then something just something jumped out at me, and I was like, this guy's interesting. He's got an energy. And when I started looking at the profile, and then that's when I was very naturally guided to just reach out, and that's how it started from there.
So some people have talked about when they hear the voice of the other. I mean, you had a 3-hour, I guess, first date. I mean, was the voice activating once y'all started talking?
I felt it was, for sure.
Yeah, because I was before we made contact, I was checking his profile and checking to see if he had gotten back to my message. It was sticking, like his profile was sticking with me before we even talked. And then, it was something before we even met, even started engaging, before we made contact with each other.
Yeah, it was almost as if,
not surprised.
It was almost as if, Rob put out the call, and I just took a little while to respond, for whatever reasons. But it was divine timing that I did, when I did answer that voice when I did, because that was obviously.
I had let it go. I had just stopped looking at the site, and I'd let that go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, when his message popped up one day, the notification, I was like, oh, wow, I knew exactly who it was. And also I had been, Spain had been on my radar just about Spain had come up in a reading, and I was focusing on Spain, and had my previous past life was in Spain, and I've worked on that, and then feel like there's pieces that I need to go pick up. So Spain was the first stop for me in my journey next, it feels like. But originally in his profile, it said he was from the UK. When he popped back up and messaged me, it said he was from Spain, which was another interesting and trippy thing.
Yeah, and that's right, because I updated my profile to say Spain, because for the past 5 years on and off I have been living there, and you know, so it was very interesting when Rob said that he was very interested in Spain, and I felt he had a past life connection to Spain. And also you had a reading with a wonderful friend of ours, Isabella, who's
So
an amazing psychic.
you know, that reading was Isabella Green.
Oh, Isabella from Sedona.
And that's how actually same kind of connection with Isabella. I learned about Team Light and was drawn to Team Light, and then Isabella's picture just jumped out at me, and then I ended up working with her, and that's how I found your show, was through your interviews with Isabella, actually. Yeah. And she, helped me with the past life in Spain, and that's how that. I was already thinking about it, and I've wanted to walk the Camino for many years, but then it came up, obviously, as to why Spain has been on my. I mean, from Texas, I'm from East Texas, so not many people are thinking about Spain in these.
No, we were just talking about that. East Texas is a very interesting area. All props to East Texas. So your Wells, from his perspective, Wells, and then our UK, and then Spain, and then when you finally make contact, he is in Mexico, which is next door.
Right.
So, well, let me ask you about this first. That 3-hour first date. I mean, you mentioned earlier, one of you did the feelings, the energy. I would assume the energy that you were feeling. Was there chakra type sensations? Was there Kundalini type sensations? That type of thing.
For me, it was for sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
And what did you experience, babe?
I had, like it was like a, there was definitely heart activation, and then a lot of, there was calming. There was a interesting, because when I learned about you and Morgan, and I went and researched some of your videos and got a little bit of your story, and then heard you and Morgan talking about your connection, your ethereal connection, your higher self connections, and everything that has been going on with that. It really spoke to me somehow. And I'm not sure if I'm having that experience or have that experience, but it relates more to that especially when you got into that divine, you accessing your divine feminine.
Right.
Through this whole process in relationship with Morgan, the physical, and then all the upper, the higher, whatever you want to.
You're talking about the light body. Yeah, the light body activity.
The light body. And then the experience of you going, experiencing the feminine, divine feminine, your divine feminine. It's like the divine masculine feminine from your ethereal light body, divine masculine feminine Morgan's side, and then that coming together, which I guess is all the same thing anyway. And so as a gay man, I realized years back, like my experience of having the divine masculine, the divine feminine somehow working together, or the point of this lifetime being the connection, my access to the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and everything just really kind of sparked my interest, because I'm already calling in that understanding for myself and my experience and how things connect. And so I immediately started sharing that with Hugh from the beginning about the light body connection. And I wonder if that's in our future, or if the spiritual connection is leading to that opening and expansive awareness. But I think I had, I have, like, in 3D, very physical, like my sexual energy is, I'm a Scorpio. I have very strong energy to deal with in this life. And so there are activations and heart activations, and there's been a calming of the more like 3D physical experience that I've had. And I've been able to go deeper into my childhood, deeper into the inner child experience, and work on the things that were causing a lot of that, like physical, intense physical experience of my sexual energy, because I know that it's there's a purpose for it, and I'm learning to channel it and find out where it wants to go and how I can use it. And so there was a calming of that with our connection. And I think the heart opening and just the inspiration, like this just spiritual inspiration sort of, I don't know how else to put it, has, it's like that heart-brain coherence thing, like to move out of your mind, the mental body, into the heart, the neurons in the heart, and let that kind of lead you and guide you. I think that's what's happened to me with the overt sexual energy. And that's really, it's been amazing, and it's helped me a lot. it's still there, but it's finding, I think it's balancing itself and finding its pathway somehow. So I guess our connection, it's not in that way, it's not like we're two separate people.
Right.
It's like there is
so almost like through the whole time period, kind of a natural merging between the two, and then with yourself, maybe the programming and the influence of the programming or experience or whatever, moving into more of the natural rhythms, the pure intention or pure
And one of the interesting things was too, I mean, I told Rob quite early on that before we met, I had been single and celibate for 4 years. That I knew that the next person that came into my life, it had to be of a certain vibration, a certain frequency, and a certain awareness and consciousness for that to happen. I just knew that. And after we had our call, I felt full. Something energetically was happening in my body. I'm not, I'm not talking about 3D sexual energy or anything like that. It was something of a higher vibration, like I've just, like Rob was just saying. I was getting full body rushes afterwards, and that was telling me that something important was happening, something important was beginning to happen in my field. And that continued for the next days, following the call. And I was seeing signs everywhere, synchronicity signs everywhere. I was getting angel numbers. I was seeing, signs like when I was in Mexico, I'd walk past a tree on the way to the co-work space that I was going to every morning. And the morning after the call, someone had hung these 2 big red hearts on the tree, and they were sparkling in the sunlight. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Can't make this shift up.
Can't make this shift up. So, you know, at that time, I knew something profound was happening. I knew something important was happening. And from that point, everything just naturally flowed, and it was a merging of energies. It was, I felt like, you know, something, I felt a deep recognition of Rob, like my soul was recognizing him, and that I'd known him for a very, very long time.
Well, I think the other thing that I love the way that, first of all, I love your demeanor and your disposition. You know, I mean, you're not overly excited, you know, and I don't mean that's a bad thing, but I mean overly excited in an egoic way. Sounds like that you've relied on your energetic feelings, energetic sensations, as opposed to, you know, the humans, you know, verbalizing, you know, trying to verbalize what the hell this is. Just, and then I think one of the points, I think, because a lot of people are interested in this. This is one of the reasons that we're doing this. Not that everybody has to follow this, but I'm just saying that it one of the things that's come up over the years, and it certainly was with Morgan and I. We were both celibate 4 to 5 years, and both had made that same promise, I guess, to ourselves that we're not getting back into this. It's an all or nothing proposition. So I think that's just something that I think people might find helpful. You know, I'm really excited to hear what you're saying in regard to the energy that was moving between you. You know, I mean, obviously there can be a conscious merging. Some people might be more well versed in that than other people, and it doesn't mean anything. It's because it feels very natural, and it sounds like both of you went with that, and that's, you know, really, I think the message. You know, it's not it's different for everybody, and but I think that's what's happening. So a lot of people have asked about it. We're actually going to do an event next month in regard to Harry Osgama's or soul merging, because it's I think becoming something that's more and more needed, and people are becoming more and more aware of it through stories like your own. I've got to ask you because my curiosity is getting the best of me. So you have this 3-hour conversation. I'm sure you had many after that. I'm sure there was a lot of merging going on, consciously or not. How long was it before you came together and met each other? And how did that go?
Oh, wow. I mean, it was, well, I was, so we began speaking in late March, and then I was in Mexico until June the 8th, because I traveled around Mexico. I was in Oaxaca, then I went to the West Coast, and I went back to the West Coast of Mexico, and then I spent 7 weeks in Mexico City. And during all that time, Rob and I were talking every day, and, you know, video chatting every day, and speaking, you know, about obviously so many things to do with multidimensionality and spirituality and conscious relationships. And we explored about, you know, we felt that we were exploring a new template for relationships, and a new earth template for our kind of relationship. So, you know, through that process, we forged a very deep bond before we actually physically met. But going to that you know, what we spoke about earlier, what you said, Babe, about you know, the peace, feeling the peace. Because when I flew to meet Rob, because we arranged that I would go to Texas and meet him in Austin, and we'd spoke about him possibly coming to Mexico City and meeting there, but it just how things flowed, and I ended up going to Texas. That was the easiest thing. And the one thing I remember of the day is I was on the plane. I flew from Mexico City to Atlanta, and I had to go through customs there, and I flew to Austin. And huge butterflies and nervousness all the way. Excitement, obviously, of course. But when I got to Austin and we met, and Rob was walking through the luggage carousel hall towards me, and I saw him, and of course we were in the terminal because everyone's in masks.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And the one thing I remember vividly is this pair of beautiful blue eyes just looking at me over the mask and coming closer and closer. And then that beautiful moment of recognition. And when I held him for the first time, I had in my heart was the deepest sense of peace I think I'd ever felt. Wow. It was just really deep peace in me. It was like an angelic dawn or something. It was just, and my whole being just went, ah.
Sounds like an shift moment.
It was.
Yeah.
Because this is really, it's this is an amazing clarification to see the program anytime the program is up, and anything that's internal, because it's been so easy. We started talking. There were so many synchronicities. We were in the same story. Like, I had not been in a relation. I've been in few relationships in my life, and very extended periods between them. And same thing. We're just waiting, and if it never happens, it never happens. But it has to be more than what I was used to, the old programming. And or less than the program.
Right.
But it's been so simple, and it's like you want to question it. It's like I have moments where I'm like, the program comes up and you want to question, where's the drama, where's the density, where's the something to latch onto, the feeling, all that. This is so it's beyond the programs, like Morgan says.
Yeah.
And it was, every step was easy. When we met and we got in the car, we just drove away from the airport and we continued just like we were online. There was nothing to get used to. We went through a process. We did our process. The straight world is going to freak out. We talked for a few months, and then we met, and we decided that he was going to get an Airbnb for at least a week, and we were going to stay separate, and then we were going to have actual dates, and we did that.
Wow. That's far out, man.
And I was in Austin at the time, and so I was there for just a few months. And we had a few weeks or a month to go. And so we said, okay, you're going to come stay in the apartment with me. And every step of the way, we just flowed. Everything worked. There was, just felt like there was very little to get used to adjust to, even though neither of us had been used to being, I mean, I can tend to be a hermit. Hugh can tend to be a hermit. And there's a lot that we would seem to need to get used to. And we just, there was just a synchronicity, It's like the higher aspects are coming in and just taking care of everything. And I just sit and wait for any of the program to come up, any of the inner child needs that come up, and then I can focus on that and bring consciousness to that. Because there's obviously no need to question what's going on between us. Let that have as little obstruction as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess at some point you have to stop looking for the shoe to drop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating that you had the foresight and the consciousness to stay separate from, that first week or whatever it was. Although it must have been very difficult when you went to bed at night, knowing that, the other one was not too far away. That would have been a little bit challenging. So you talked about, excuse me, you talked about the, I don't mean like, with just the awareness of the old patterns and the old paradigms and relationships. And then of course, combining that with what you've become aware of or what you had become aware of in terms of the possibilities or even in the exchanges that you had. When you did have programming, rear its head, was that something you kept to yourselves, or did you discuss it with each other, or was it a little bit of both, or how did that go?
We talk about everything, any and everything. We don't. And that's another thing that I was looking for, just pondering. Is it possible to have someone that I do not have to edit at all? Just take that whole energy and process out of editing. And that's something we talked about as well, because especially, through this situation we find ourselves in on this planet, it seems like people have had to edit more and more. I think Morgan and I even might have talked about this. Editing is such a huge part of our life now, depending on who you're with. And if traveling, if you've got family, if your family's in different areas, there's different demographics that you're traversing through. I've found myself editing, and I, naturally had to do that my entire life to, especially when I was younger, to feel like I could survive. But now through the pandemic, it feels like just a process of editing is a huge part of our lives now. And so we talked about that a lot. And I can't imagine living so closely with someone and having to put a lot of effort into editing myself for their sake. There's sometimes reasons of timing of when you approach things, maybe, but you got to be in your heart for that, and with their heart for that. But otherwise, we don't edit. No, we have no reason to edit. That's not even. I mean, how about what you and Morgan? What is that situation for you two?
Well, I mean, we had 17 months where we were doing what you were doing, and so from the very first meeting, which was a messaging, 3:33 in the morning on September the 3rd, I was in Houston, and I had interesting, because it feels like the same energy as to what you were describing. I was going through a massive activation that night, and I spent hours and hours working with consciousnesses, primarily Kuan Yin, to address it to the best I could with what I knew. And then at one point, I just jumped off the couch after about 5 hours of this, and I said, I need her now. And she messaged me within a couple of minutes. So when that happened, she'd been downloading Harioscama, soul merging for a long time, for many years. And so there was, of course, that third element was certainly present, you know, because you can't make this stuff up. I mean, 3:33 in the morning on 9/3. So what ended up happening was she thought I was another client or another, you know, say short-term contract that would enhance both souls, something she'd been practicing that was part of her purpose. So she said to me, you know, I said to her, I need to talk to you. Something's happening. She said, I know. And she said, you know, like, do you trust me? I said, yes. And she said, I'm going to reach through the ethers and hold your heart in my hands with your permission. And I said, yes. So immediately I felt it. And then we went through a merging process, and then I did the same. And so everything was founded that way. Very much the energetics played a huge role in the foundation of our connection, which she probably understood much more than I did. She did. I was more intuitive, more feeling, more natural, you know, in terms of not natural, meaning that she wasn't, but just whatever it was more of a feeling thing. And so we spent a lot of time doing merging. You know, she helped me, like from a practitioner standpoint, you know, learn to contact my higher self, learn for me to be able to kind of comprehend what I was already experiencing the previous few years. And so, yeah, we did a lot of talking, and then she came over for 10 weeks in 2017, 12 weeks in 2018. And then in 2019, she came over for another 90 days, came back 2 months later. And then there was another year and a half, 2 years. But so, yeah, it's been a progression. I think, you know, it's been a progression. We've stayed pretty busy. So there's been a lot of things that come up. And I'm talking about grid work and Soulogy events and a lot of people coming in and out. And so, yeah, it's been a progression. I mean, yeah. And I think at the end of the day, and I say this, you know, quite a bit this year, that the biggest value to me in this relationship, I mean, obviously the number one thing is the oneness. And like I said before, you know, how can you find oneness with the world or the universe or the city or the village or whatever if you can't find it with one person? And I think it does take a lot of honesty. I'm sure everybody's journeys are different, but yeah, as the days go on, you know, regardless of what occurs, you know, around us or with us, yeah, there's more and more and more transparency. And I think some of that is, at least in my opinion, some of that is you're not aware till you're aware. And that's the value that I was talking about behind the oneness, to me, is the value of being able to look into that mirror and see what you don't know in yourself. Once you get past that it's them, and you start to understand that it's you, and everything is for you. So, yeah, I think this is, you know, this is really the most fertile part of the relationships, where the most potential can be found, and it's. You know, people look at these connections. I mean, your story sounds magnificent, but it also sounds very well thought out. Um, I think the energies are a lot different in 2021, 2022 than they might have been in 2015 and so on, for any aspect of our journeys. But, you know, the bottom line is it takes work and it takes love. And I think, you know, she says we always return to love no matter what. And that's really and even the couples coming on here, that's one thing you hear over and over. Regardless what it looks like, we always return to love. So, yeah, I've not heard anyone use the term editing, but I think that's a good term. And I think that's probably one of the number one transformational sequences taking place for all of us in our regards, whether it be the relationship or the world in general or anything in between.
Yeah. Those are very powerful reflections that, you know, we can certainly tune into very deeply, because you know, when we met last year and then we spent the first few months, we also had, you know, many challenging things happen last year. So we had, you know, we had a lot externally happening around us during the summer of last year. I don't know if Rob, if you want to share, you know, the kind of the journey we took, and then, you know, how that's led to more, you know, deeper work and within ourselves, and you know, doing some aspects of shadow work, and then working through, you know, later in the years, and we did some traveling. We did some traveling in America and in Mexico, but, you know, during those times as well, with the challenges, we were working on our communication at a few points as well, weren't we? You know, so just being with those things as they came up. So yeah, Babe, I don't know if you want to share more about
I guess timing was interesting. And the while we are flowing, and I'm also in the process of just learning, just allowing and tuning in, staying tuned in, and working on any kind of distractions and programming, and just so that I allow to step into the unknown, because this is unknown for me. And but the timing is really interesting, and it makes sense in a way too. So I had right after, in April, my stepdad passed away in April, and while we were communicating and getting to know each other, and I had to rush home to my mother, and he had been in my life for 26 years, and it's quite a transition. My dad passed away in 2017, and my parents had separated when I was young, and there's just been a lot of deaths in the family now. You know, many people can say that now. But prior to the pandemic, we had a lot of. There's not near as many family members in my family now, and then my stepdad passed away, so I went home, and then my mom passed away actually in July, and in between, Hugh had just enough time. I took him around to all my family, and he met everyone, which was a process because there were certain people that I wasn't going to bring him. I wasn't going to bring him into certain spaces in East Texas, and things just kept shifting and shifting to where I knew, I felt internally, I sensed internally that I could bring him. And it did, and everyone is shifting. Everything is shifting now, and I was readily seeing it in the 3D with my personal family. So he got to meet everyone, and then we headed on a trip to West Texas, and then my mother went into the hospital, and then I got the call from my brother saying, "Yeah, you probably need to come home." And so I went home, and Hugh was there with me. It was a long process in the hospital, and he was right there. The family couldn't come in the hospital, so they opened a window, and all my family and Hugh stood there at the window to be with my brother and I as she passed. And he stood at the window. He did not move. It's like we came together physically, and we were there, and we were equipped and ready to handle. You know, this is kind of like the boot dropping in another sense.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we moved through it and flowed through it. Our connection was so there that I just would go, just come home and just cry in his arms. He would hold me, and it just is that thing. Like, how can you meet someone the month before and then just release yourself completely into their arms, in like with emotion, what the depths of your being having to come up and be released, while you're consciously trying to be there with it, be conscious about the whole experience, and you don't even have to think twice about your partner there, because they've got you and they're holding space for you, and we both and we've gone through the same things. He's having very similar issues in his family life, and we've had to mirror each other. Like it's like we're both working through the same things in different parts of the world, and we're watching ourselves go through it. And it's like this. It's like we call it like a chrysalis. I went through that, and then I started my own business this year. I moved and was planning. I moved a few times in 2021, then met Hugh, and then was starting my own business, and then had my family members pass, and Hugh was going through similar things all at the same time, and then was planning to move. We were packed and ready to move to a foreign country for me, and then I my health came into question. I got ill, and for me, well, we both did actually, and Hugh passed through in about a week or so.
Weeks and days.
I really had a lot to, for whatever reason, my heart was going through a period, a transition, and a lot of release when I became ill as well. And it was really transformative for me. There was a lot going on in my being. And, it did really feel like you and I talked about it a lot, and we were going through the same thing in different ways, and it just was the chrysalis. It felt like we hit a point where you stepped out of the chrysalis and you look back and you don't remember. It's like the butterfly does not remember the caterpillar. The butterfly has no memory of the caterpillar. And it was kind of like that. I felt myself all of a sudden, I just wasn't the same. It's not like a walk-in experience or anything like that. It was just like a chrysalis, sort of a mini chrysalis experience, like in transformation. And so it's like we're both either readying ourselves for each other, readying ourselves for the path, readying ourselves for our purpose in this life, readying ourselves for everything. I don't. Well,
all of the above.
See, but all of the above.
Yeah, and absolutely. And also alongside all of that, those aspects, we both were doing a lot of, using modalities such as EFT to do a lot of inner healing, inner child work, and bringing up trauma to the surface so that it could be acknowledged and processed and released. And that's been a very powerful sort of unfolding as well as we've gone through this kind of chrysalis phase. And it's like shedding the layers of the old sort of 3D personality and moving into more of a state of unification within, which is reflecting the unification of, union as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's interesting because Rob went back to Texas mid-November, because we were in Mexico City, and he was physically struggling, and he had a lot of anxiety, and you were having some heart palpitations, weren't you? And so it's quite a intense. Well, it was a very intense time for us after everything that happened in the US, and just instinctively knew that the best thing for him at that point was to ground, and to be in Texas in a familiar place, and to ground, and to be there, and to take care of everything he needed to take care of, and regain his strength, and come back into that that heart center, and that place of heart strength, was energetically, physically, and through the grounding, and naturally that meant that I would go back to Spain. I would do the same process in Spain. I would ground. I would prepare the ground energetically as well, in the way that I needed to. But also, while I've been in Spain, I've continued doing the EFT work, and shedding of fears, old fears, traumas, just letting them go. Because from a place of knowing, they're not needed any longer.
Yeah.
So it is a process of preparing for the next phase of our relationship.
Yeah.
And it seems like also the part we've also discussed, like clearing for the collective and clearing ancestry. Because of this aspect of I've gotten pulled, in a sense, pulled back to the area that my family's in. And I just, one day it just hit me that I'm physically going through and touching all of my mother's belongings. I'm sorting through her life myself. And then even someone actually, and everywhere I turn, someone needs help sorting through their I can see their external, and which is reflective of their internal, and there's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen. And I'm a feeler. I'm just empathic, so empathic, and I just feel so much that most of my life up at this point was just trying to learn how to deal with feeling so much, and even realizing that that's who I am. But I'm physically, literally clearing out my mother's life, and mostly on my own, as if like that's what I came to do. Someone even asked me the other day if I would help her clean and organize her closet. It's literally like 3D coming into the language, it's just coming through so much that I'm just, I don't know if at this point, if that's something that I need to see and actually transcend and just hand to other people, hand back to them, or if this is, if I'm really here to help. Do that on all levels, all the way down to physically helping people clear their closets.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting listening to you both, and then of course, before you headed back to Texas, the things that you were going through on a physical level, and then listening to your story, and then knowing my own experience and talking to other people as well, how, especially also given the fact that this is all happening during the most accelerated, energetic, transformational force that's occurred in any of our lifetimes, which is a testament to the quickening, our ability to become aware, process, release, align, whatever. But so the first thing, as I'm listening to you going, this has just become more and more clearer that this process, this Chrysalis process, can occur so many different ways for different people and couples. Some of it can be very physical. Some of it can be emotional, some of it can be a mental kind of game. And so that's one of the things that I'm really, glad to be a part of this, because it's becoming clearer. And when things become clearer, then more judgment is the judgment's diminished in these unconscious programming, unconscious biases, prejudices, and so on. I think the other thing that you said that's really interesting too is, as you were using the metaphor of the chrysalis, I love what you said about, you become the butterfly and you forget you were a chrysalis. As I'm listening to you, I'm going, that's kind of like how it is for all of us. We come to the earth, we forget about all of our, caterpillar stages, and here we are, no memory of that. And what I've noticed, and I think this is not, rocket science, but for myself and for others that, you see out in these communities, is that we're forgetting all that stuff. Like, it's not having any relevance. As an example, I know in the last 24 hours, I've done a lot of kind of like going back, looking at things again, or they pop in and you just look at them and it's a totally different thing now. Things that were traumatic, things that meant a lot, things that didn't mean a lot. And you look at it and you go, wow, this is trippy. It's just almost like reading a book or watching a movie in an uninvolved way, right? And and I think that when you said that, how that's kind of copying our entrance into the earth realm itself is very much the same. So that's you're bringing more clarity to that as well. I wanted to ask you, what was it like when you had to say goodbye? Was it difficult? Did it linger with you? I mean, what was that like for you guys?
I find it difficult.
Yeah.
Because I was a point where, we felt like we were taking a risk separating because of everything, happening in the world. And, there was a moment there I was like, well, when am I going to see my partner again? And it was, it was a little scary and a little tough. Well, rather tough for me, I will say. One of the hardest things I've done. But at the same time, I knew it was somehow, on some level, I knew that we needed to take this step, that it was a sovereign step for each of us to go into our own space and do what we needed to do and build those foundations. So, on one level I knew that, but of course on the emotional level, it was a real struggle for me. Because I was, after Rob went back to Texas, I was still in Mexico City by myself for about 2 weeks. And
at least
2 weeks, and before flying back to Spain. And I did some EFT sessions on myself in the days following. I think it was a day or two after Rob went back to Texas, and I had a lot of emotional releasing coming up. There was some grief there. There was sadness. There was, it was a natural part of the emotional part of physically separating for a time. So yeah, I had a lot of that come up and needing to be released. So yeah, it wasn't easy. One of the hardest things I've ever done.
Yeah, it was. It made sense, but in my state, because this had gone on for 7 weeks. I was in this transition for 7 weeks at that point. And yeah, I remember he stood at the bus. I boarded the bus, and it didn't pull out for I don't know how long, 15 more 20 minutes, and he stood there outside in the cold and until we pulled away. But it's disorienting going through something like that. Talk about like surrender and trust the process. And when you're dealing with anxiety as well, extreme anxiety, that the body releasing like what the body needs to release physically and the way it needs to release it, and the nervous system and all of that. I just went through a lot of phases, through that journey, and trying to stay conscious of everything as much as possible, and not be in flight, and not be in freeze, which I had to watch that too, many times. And there were times when we had decided that I would go back to Texas, and because we had met in Austin and gone to meet the family and then traveled west. We went through Colorado, Utah, and made it to Arizona. We were going to Sedona and all up the west coast, California, all the way up to Mount Shasta, Seattle, possibly up to Vancouver.
Yeah,
and
that's the same areas we covered.
Really?
For the most part. Well, I mean, we went some other places too, but that whole area you're talking about,
yeah. And we made it to our first night in Arizona, northern Arizona, before we made it to Sedona. And then I got called back with my mother. And then all of a sudden we were headed back. I mean, this is a new life for me. This is a new thing for both of us. So new. And the relationship and everything. And we just decided to be expansive, just let ourselves flow, and was like, we want to take a trip. We want to travel. We want to go to these high places. I've been called to Sedona and Mount Shasta, and Hugh's in complete alignment with all of that. And we said, well, let's do it. Let's go. Let's not, because that's my programming would be, well, can we afford it? So I was just allowing myself to bust through all of that. And we got called back to Texas, back home. All of a sudden, we're driving 2 days back, like straight. And so many things were going on in my head, but also the thing of why I'm headed back to Texas. Of course, I'm going to be with my mother, but I'm also headed back to Texas. And so then my mother passed, and we stayed, and I took care of many things. And then we got to a point where Hugh was like, we need to get out of here. We need to get you out of here for a break. And so we went and tried to finish at least part of our trip, and we made it to Sedona and all that. And then we got back to Austin. We flew to Mexico, and then I
went to California too.
What I went through, we made it to California. We did a retreat. But then we ended up back in Mexico. And then it got to the point where we both realized that I needed to go back to Texas. And so there were moments when I stopped and just looked at Hugh and said, is the universe directing us away from each other? Is the universe telling us anything? Whatever. And because there were times when I just was not clear. It was not clear. I was just having to stay in the moment and experience what I was experiencing, and my mind just didn't know where to settle. And I would stop him and say, is the universe telling us something? What is the universe telling us? Is it anything to do with our connection and that we are not meant to be together? Why am I being drawn back to Texas? And he would look at me every time and say, no, we are not being separated. That is not what's going on. And I was like, okay. And since I've been back in Texas, it makes sense. The shifting has continued to happen. I'm just seeing shifts in people around me. And I think the same thing is happening in Hugh's life. And it's so interesting. It's like this, I needed to be here to witness this, or it's great to be here to witness this. It's to physically see this in the 3D happening with my own two eyes, and to also the inner, just my energy. It's just interesting. It's just interesting to not know exactly how things are shifting, why things are shifting, the timing of everything is just happening. But that's, I mean, I'm starting to get just little waves of clarity of seeing into just how the universe works. Just everything is, I mean, just how everything's working together. And the difference between like the way you think of dimensions, like you think of dimensions as one being higher than the next, that doesn't seem relevant anymore. Dimensions being separate, that doesn't seem relevant anymore. It's like everything is true all at the same time. It's the paradox. That's the one thing that helped me in my spiritual journey years back, is when I really just understood that life, 3D life, is a paradox. And to be okay with that, and to have that as my base understanding. And now I'm just calling in more clarity on, you know, how can everything be true at once, and everything be working together, everything be, I mean, oneness. It's the oneness, and that means that means.
You guys are saying a lot. I mean, you're obviously conveying your journey and your story, but there's a lot of information, a lot of code that's coming through. I think, you know, for me, one of the big understandings this year has been, or this past year, has been, you know, people talk about vulnerability and surrender. And, you know, it's, you know, I've always kind of understood that, you know, we're headed to 100% telepathic scenario, which means everything is transparent. And so I struggled with the word surrender. I looked at the word vulnerability, and I realized, you know, this is the path to transparency. So, like, listening to you, one of the main thing that jumps out to me is when your mother was in her final days and Hugh's standing outside the window, and you will go home and you just cry, and he holds you. You know, to me, that is kind of a physical example of the energetics of pure transparency, both ways. And I think that's, I think is, you know, is because obviously in what we do here at Soulogy, you know, we have a lot of connections around the world. You get to see a lot of stuff, as we all do in these communities. And one of the really beautiful things, I think, and I admire people that pick up a phone and start videoing themselves, or however they want to express themselves. It doesn't have to be with their face or a video, but that's what I think speaks to people, is this transparency. It's the heart opening, and I think in these connections, that is no different than everything else. That's where you know, the greatest find is, because I think we're unconscious in ourselves when it comes to how vulnerable and transparent can we be. We think it's about, you know, not lying and some of the more you know, symptomatic things of our programs, but I think it goes deeper than that. It's actually trusting that person and being able to just put your head in their chest and just cry. I think another example of that same energy with you is like what you said about separating, and then you would ask Hugh, what's going on here, and then one or the other, because if it's one now, it'll be the other later. As Morgan says, we experience and then we observe, or we observe and then we experience, which is exactly what's happening to y'all. Yeah. But I think that story about the separation and your questions to Hugh, and then in that space, he was the holder. You were the initiating the mirror of transparency. I'm probably not doing a great job at explaining this, but I can see to a greater extent in talking to you both the value, because it really isn't what is the other person going to do for me. It's more about how deep can I go with this person, because I think there's things that we can't even begin to go within ourselves because there isn't anyone to bounce it off of. And it's hard to be in a space of trust for all of us, given the conditioning and the paradigm that we're coming from. It's a challenge for all of us. And I think at a human level, that's what it is. There's something very powerfully energetic in your story and in these connections when the test or the trials and the tribulations or the externals apply the pressure that they do, and then the self-reliance and the mutual reliance kind of goes hand in hand. It's almost as if they occur at the same time. But yeah, I just want to say, thank you for. And I'm not signing off. If you guys can stay a little longer, we'll run over. But I think it's really refreshing because I feel like both of you are wide open, absolutely wide open right now in front of everybody, which is the same frequency that you share with each other. And I guess that's what I'm saying is. The last thing I would want to say too, I have great respect for the respect of the human aspect. So even though at a human level, I can totally relate to what you're saying in regards to the separation, I knew from a higher level, and I think she did too, there's something bigger going on here. We don't understand it, and I damn sure didn't like it at all. But I didn't let it stick to me. I just said, like, Hugh, this, it's game on. This is going down, and that's all there is to it. So I just want to say thank you for, honoring your human aspects along the way and not getting caught up in all the downloads and the channels and the activations and the past life memories and the woo-woo, and actually bringing that human or both, hand in hand, really on point, and embracing and allowing and accepting the emotions, the everything, allowing those to be seen and felt and owned and healed and aligned within yourself and each other. I think that's a powerful testimony within your story. So you have a big fan here.
Well, that's just that's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, we are big fans too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think transparency, I think everyone understands exactly what you're saying, and transparency is a really great word. We have been specifically talking about grounding, and being human, like really sinking into this experience, and then inner child work, that inner child, and this the footsteps that we took on this planet in this life, and what I have been really, it's interesting because I've been doing this psychological work, I mean, since my early 20s. It really opened to my spiritual path in my early 20s after a very confusing childhood. Of what am I doing here? How did I get here? But I feel like I am just now starting this journey of being able to hold my inner child, and which takes me back to story, which I can't stick in either, but that for whatever reason and whatever was decided, or however we want to look at it, that those were to be the experiences that I would have in this life, I must bring my consciousness to it. And we're both very invested. I mean, if the great shift is happening now, we're very much want to be on point with our purpose.
Yeah.
But we know that shadow work is our most important. We want to be in this life experience being clear of as much shadow and bringing. I feel really drawn to the center, light and dark. I've done a lot of polarity work, and I continue to do polarity work. Not that I don't care for that word work, but the light side is a polarity, the dark side is a polarity, and I have really know that we are all of it. And also we're dealing with perception, just perception, which is an interesting thing to even talk about or think about in 3D from this perspective, or as we're shifting, especially. But I've just been looking a lot at polarity because I'm really wanting the experience of the balance, and being able to also be okay with all the shifting, all the changing, and step out of control. And I think one of our main focuses has been grounding into this human experience and really shining our consciousness on shadow, any shadow. And we are always able to, there's always something that we can be seeing in any of our, in our experience.
I agree. I agree with that 100%. And I stopped saying I fixed that a long time ago. Because I hear that a lot. Or it's alluded to. And I would say, and I'm not taking anything away from anybody, I'm just basically saying, let's get real, because there's always an ing on all of it. I'm fixing it. I mean, how many times have any of us gotten something comes up after we thought we cleared it? It's infinite, and that's okay. That's not a burden. But I'm listening to you, and I always have, I would say, multi-dimensional experiences now on these shows, and there's so many profound truths coming through on this episode because, as I listen to you both, you're obviously both very connected. You're both very committed to yourselves, to the collective, to your relationship. But it's going back to that thing you said about the butterfly not knowing they were the caterpillar anymore. I think obviously there's been a big influence and a vital role in our awakenings. In great part has been code coming in, activations, transmissions, downloads, past life memories. But we came into this thing with all of that. So it's accessible, and I think we've come far enough that we know it. But I think, I guess what I'm saying is what I'm getting from you, or what I'm getting more clearly, is to I guess have as much or more conviction in rediscovering or discovering or uncovering our human life, and not divorcing ourselves from it, or not wanting to forget about it, or whatever it is. But to me, that would make sense to me, just in the way I feel like in this moment talking to y'all, is to be more whole isn't going to be attained to the degree that this life experience can offer. And I'm talking about, was I Jesus' son in a past life, or, was I, an Indian chief, or whatever the case was. It's going to come from this life, this incarnation, this summary life incarnation, where we all have these things that have occurred. Some way or another, they just look different, but it's trauma, it's programming, it's whatever you want to call it. But to really get in touch with that, it's the never-ending journey of the never-ending story, and that's what I'm picking up from you guys. That I find is really impressive and really important, is to calmly, like with that calm energy that you both felt with each other, it's like to calmly, reach for those things that did cause a lot of pain or confusion, or even were blacked out. So again, I think that's that for me anyway, and I don't know how others feel, but I feel like this is a very human episode, but human in the sense of a empowered human. What I would even say is a coming into a divine human, because the last thing I'll say is that I'm absolutely convinced that there's a direct relationship between what you guys are presenting and what I'm trying to explain that you're presenting. There's a direct relationship between that and our higher skills, sensitivities, and abilities. Through this, there's only one transparency, the transparency of the heart. And that's what I'm picking up from y'all. I mean, it's amazing, and it's refreshing. Oh, let me ask you the question we've been asking these connections, these couples. I'll start with Rob. Rob, what do you love the most? What do you admire the most? What inspires you the most about you?
Well, the first thing that pops up is his groundedness. He's just so grounded. He feels like a rooted tree to me. And he has this, just, I can feel this beautiful heart, just this beautiful heart that is, I want to say his heart. I can feel his heart, but it doesn't feel like I'm just talking about his heart. It feels like I just feel this beautiful purity. And that's something that I just feel so connected to. It's not like it's just his, it's like it's mine as well, in a way. This purity in his heart. I would only hope that I can achieve that kind of purity. And yeah, he's just beautiful. And it's such there's a powerful energy. There's such powerful energy there that people may not see right off, or experience right off. I know it's there. And this is the beautiful thing of balance and being in the middle, the polarities of this spiritual power, this immense power, maybe having some connection and awakening of maybe your history, your soul history, and then you have this flowing, like, gorgeous like divine feminine heart, love and gentleness and kindness and creativity and inspiration. And that's just what I am drawn to, this play of this synergy between the polarities. And that's what I experience with him. And if I was in the program and if this was years back, I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't see it. It's not, I don't get that from the surface. This is being plugged in and tuned in. And I'm wanting this, like, you know, we're talking about the very earth experience, the very human experience here. But like what happens when your third eye is fully turned on? You're gonna see more than just the 3D physical, obviously. And I, with him, I feel the multidimensionality, and I'm wanting that to this relationship to experience. I want to have that sight in the rest of my life, so that I see things more clearly and more deeply in multidimensional aspect of everything, everywhere. Because if I'm seeing it in him, then I'm hoping that I'm starting to see that in everywhere. So, yeah, I just am grateful that he's brought that to me, that he's here, that he showed up, and I'm having this experience.
You.
Oh, wow. I will mirror what Rob said about my heart. I say that about his. He has the most beautiful angelic heart, and it is from somewhere beyond comprehension. There's this place of joy, and how that is anchoring into the planet, how that is anchoring into a human being. And I think what I love most about Rob is that I feel like I am home. And it's something I felt from the beginning. And also I was describing that moment when we first met. It was that feeling of utter peace, of being home. And yeah, I trying to find the words of how deeply I feel this. It's his beautiful heart, his beautiful angelic heart, his energy, his curiosity, his willingness to evolve and grow, and his incredible mind, and the fact that I can talk with him about anything, and this strength, his strength as well. He's an immensely powerful being, and the strength I see in him is I've never seen anything like it. He brings me pure joy. He just fills me with joy. So fills my being, with a light and a joy I've never experienced before. And again, the same. I am so blessed. I'm so grateful, and I just, yeah, so blessed. I feel so blessed that we met when we did, and I could be there for him during the times we've gone through, and just the magic of the adventures that we've shared so far, the path we've walked so far, the soul recognition. You know, that I recognize him from. I feel like I've known him forever, and yeah, it's it's difficult for me to express what a beautiful being he is, and how much I love him.
Love you too.
Love you.
We didn't even get to talk about the sacred sex. And you know what I mean by that. Also because people always know I'm going to ask. No, but yeah, this is really cool. I asked that question. I don't know how many couples we've had on now, especially since Morgan made that announcement in November, I think. But it's interesting and I realize people show up. Energies are different every day. I mean, somebody might be having a good day or a bad day. There might be some friction between them when they come on or whatever. Who knows? But I really feel like that, like what you both just said about each other, really you said about yourselves as well, and the relationship, life, the whole thing, can be stated and can be turned on at any time. Regardless of what's going on. That is returning to love. That is the frequency of love. You mentioned home, and our old friend who's still with us, Franco Di Nicola. Yeah, I remember asking him one time, "What's this about?" I said to him, "Do we have, like you hear about star systems, and do we come from a home star system, a home planet, whatever?" He said, "No. At some level we do, but when you get to the origin, it's a home frequency, which makes more sense, vibration frequency." And I remember when he told me that, I thought, the real home, you can't leave even if you want to. It is you, right? And that's what I'm reminded of in listening to you both. It's incredible to share space with you for 90 minutes. And I'd love to get together with you again. I don't think anybody would complain about that. I really want to just tell you both that, and this, what you're doing is being felt by the entire Earth grid, regardless of whether there's 72 people watching or 72 million. It doesn't matter. This is energy, and what you guys are doing is the true Trinity energies, to yourself, to your partner, and to the collective, all in one equal, profound, beautiful, new birth experience. So thank you very much for that. And I'd love to get together with y'all again sometime.
Sure.
And I wish you Godspeed on coming together again. And I know you will.
Thank you.
And I know the linear is not an issue. This is not about linear time. This is about whatever the hell this is we're doing. But it's pretty cool, whatever it is. Somebody just said one of the best. Somebody just said one of the best shows ever. I think so too. In 3,100, 3,200 shows, but also this what we're all doing here is the best show ever. So you guys, any idea when? And I don't mean to. I'm just curious. Like, you guys, do you see the any time that you might be getting back together? You feel like it's going to be a few more months, or what do you think?
Soon.
Yeah, soon. Yeah,
Very soon.
very soon.
That's a good word.
That's what we're. Yeah.
That's a great word. That's a quantum word. That's a quantum word right there.
Very soon.
Hey, I love you guys, and thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I just love any coming online and being able to just catch at least a part of one of your shows just almost any time. It's just amazing. You know, wherever we are on the planet and whatever things are looking like in the external, if I can always just open my computer, grab my phone, and you are just doing this amazing work, and just
Beautiful
it's
work.
like community. Just
Yeah.
it's like community. If you ever have a moment where you're like, wow, this is hard, I need some community or anything, like Todd Medina is always there. It's just, I'm really appreciative of that. And also
absolutely.
I've learned so much when I stop and catch a piece of one of your shows at least, and it's always a great experience, and it's synchronistic, and always it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really enjoy your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you know, I heard when I got downloaded this word Soulogy 2011 or 2012, and Morgan's birthday. I wouldn't know her at the time, but and before I knew, which I would find out later, how, or at least part of the story, and how we created this prior to that, you know, in the etheric field, or however you want to call that, in our home frequency, or however you want to describe that. I was always told that it's not about you; it's about this. And so, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, but it's the Robs and the Hughes and everyone that comes on this show and shows up that opens their heart. And I think you guys would definitely be in the top 10 in 3,000 shows. And there's not taking a judgment against anybody, but it's new for all of us. And one of the places that we're finding this is in these relationships, whether they're into their 7th year like we are, or they're into their 7th month. We've seen people carrying this frequency that have been together for short periods of time on the linear timeline. And we had some people on the other day that were together 25 years, and their heart was pretty close to being open like y'all's. I mean, in my opinion, it may have been the same, but yeah. So it's about you know, as Morgan put out an appeal to the universe on the linear, I think 2008, 2009, to be part of a platform where people could share their stories, their experiences, you know, as well as their skills and abilities. And it's happening. And, you know, like you said, everything's a paradox. So I have to remind myself of that almost daily. Like, oh, we're not doing enough. We're not reaching enough people, but everything's upside down, like you said. So if it looks like a little, it's a lot. And if it looks like a lot, it's a little, right? But your love within yourselves and for each other and for humanity and for the universal is there's no paradox there. I mean, it's very apparent. And again, thank you very much. And I look forward to getting together with you again. And I love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Morgan.
Thank you.
Thanks to Morgan for.
Thank you to you both.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you.
We love you all.
Yeah, we love you. Thank you.
You guys take care. See
you
you
too.
soon.
Right.
Okay. Bye-bye.